Hey guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with the most surprising books that I read in 2020. These are both good and bad. I don't like doing the most disappointing or the worst books I've read, but I will do the most surprising, and these are either books that I thought I'd love that I didn't, or books that I was just not prepared for, or books that I ended up loving that I wasn't actually sure I would love. So I will get to it. It's a mixture of both the good and the bad. Let's go ahead and get to the books. So the first one I have, I think, is the most surprising on all of our lists. First of all, because it was surprised when it was released, and then I was surprised by the content. That is Credence by Penelope Douglas. This one really came out of nowhere at the beginning of 2020, and it's not something Penelope's written before, but she's written a lot of different things. Birthday Girl is not like anything she's written before, and Devil's Night series, and so she's just it's Penelope. There's no way to really describe what kind of genre these books fit in, and so Credence was surprising. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it, and I think I gave it 4 stars because it was just, I couldn't put it down, but it was a wild ride, and I was surprised by the end of who she ended up with. I was surprised of the specific scenes that were in here. I was just surprised all around the entire time I was reading this book. Then we have one I literally finished yesterday on audio, and that is Let Me Please You by Alexandria House, I think. Yes, it is by Alexandria House, and this one's the most surprising to me because this is a bodyguard romance, and it is a novella, and I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting anything of it, and then I was looking through Alexandria House's books because I wanted to try out some different ones by her, and saw this was a bodyguard romance, and that's one of my favorite tropes. There's not nearly enough bodyguard romances written out there, and it's because her sibling is famous. I forget which sibling it is. This is book 4.5 in the series. I haven't read any in the series though, and so all of the couples are like established, and then she has a bodyguard. She babysits her nephew a lot, and he is tall and she is tall, and I really love that she was over 6 feet tall because we don't nearly get that many tall heroines in the books that I read, so I appreciated that, and it was good, and it was surprising because it's a novella, and I actually ended up really enjoying it because I have a hard time loving novellas. So I would check this out if you want a bodyguard romance, but it was a pleasant surprise for me. A not so pleasant surprise was A Pirate's Love by Joanna Lindsey. This one I read for my pirate romance reading vlog, and it was not it. It had a lot of non-consensual sex scenes in it. So she is kidnapped by a pirate and doesn't want him, and then he forcibly takes her like all throughout it, and then when they finally decide they like each other, there's no more explicit scenes. So it's like all the explicit scenes were ones that were forceful, and I did not appreciate that, and she would just constantly say no and he would just take it anyways. So this is an instance where it was written in the early 1990s, 1980s. I don't remember when this came out, but it was not something I enjoyed, and I know that there are a lot of early historicals out there with that kind of content, but it was literally the entire plot line that was like that, so wasn't a fan of this one. Then a pleasant surprise was Destiny's Surrender by Beverly Jenkins, and that's because this has a surprise pregnancy trope. So Billy is a sex worker, and Andrew is one of her clients, and they already like each other, but can't do anything about it. So I think he buys her a lot of things and visits her a lot. She gets pregnant, and that's where the book goes. I cannot stand surprise pregnancy plots, but I absolutely love this book. So it was really surprising to me that I would enjoy a surprise pregnancy book, but I did really like it. I think there was also a time jump, so she already had the kid, and so I do enjoy single parent romances, so I enjoyed this, and it was very much a surprise to me. The next few are not going to be good, but the next one is Irresistible by Melanie Harlow. I had seen this everywhere, and everybody loved it, but I thought that the characters acted very juvenile. It was supposed to be an age gap romance, forbidden romance. He I think he was a friend of her father's or something. I don't even remember, but I really didn't like this. I didn't like her main character. She was just stuck in a rut in her life and wouldn't do anything about it, and that's very frustrating to me. So I wasn't a fan of her. The writing wasn't that great, so I was very surprised because people love this book, but I think I gave it 2 stars. Just wasn't for me, even though it seems like something everybody else loves. The next one we have is Balance by Lucia Franco. I read this for reading banned books for my reading vlog. I was reading banned romances from Amazon, and this one I didn't know I wouldn't be able to finish. It was that uncomfortable for me. This is a taboo romance between a gymnast and her coach. Huge age gap. She's very young. She's like 15, 16. He's married. And it was a big no from me. I could not get on board with this book. I know it has some diehard fans, but it was just too taboo for me. I wasn't a fan, and I was surprised by some of the consensual scenes. Non-consensual. There was a scene that was consensual that quickly turned non-consensual, and it just kept on going, and that was when I just shut the book and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I am sorry. That is not something I want to read. That is not romantic to me at all, so I cannot read it. No shade to anybody who likes that book. That is just for me pushing it too far. I could not enjoy it, so definitely understood why it was banned, because it definitely rubbed me the wrong way, and it's not something that I enjoy reading. I don't appreciate people banning books, but I understand why people are so uncomfortable with that book. Then we have In the Unlikely Event by L.J. Shen. This one was surprising because it was a hot mess. I could not understand anybody who gave this book a good review. No offense if you gave it a good review, but this was just bizarre to me. And there was a non-consensual scene between our hero and someone else, and then something happened where it was just bizarre. I don't want to spoil it, but like they did something to honor the girl who had raped him basically, and I was like, what? And it was just a lot of weird things happening. There was a chocolate bar in there somewhere, and I was like, what? So it was bizarre, and I just didn't like it. I think I gave this 1 star. It was weird, and I didn't like it, and it was surprising by how bad it was. So yeah, L.J. Shen I'm probably not going to be reading anything from anymore, but this one was not it. A Pleasant Surprise was Fake Out by Eden Finley. I know that a lot of people had loved this book, but I didn't expect it to love it as much as I did. Unfortunately, it was surprising to me also that book 2 wasn't my favorite, but this first book, it is fake dating with an ex-baseball player, and the ex-baseball player is now like a scout, and he is openly gay. Our main character pretends to be gay to break up with someone, and he acknowledges that's an awful thing to do, and he's an awful person, and he's kind of put through the ringer for it, especially with the love interest, because the love interest is like, I'm not going to be your experiment to figure out if you're gay or not. Like, no, you can't use me like that. And so I really loved how they slowly started falling for each other, and our main character really explored his sexuality and understanding who he was and what identity he had, and how he didn't understand the labels there were, and if he felt comfortable with what labels. And I loved this book so much, and it was a pleasant surprise, and I'm hoping to read book 3, and hopefully it's better, because I wasn't the biggest fan of book 2. I think I gave book 2 3 stars, but I gave this one 5 stars. It was surprisingly fabulous. Next we have one that was surprising because it was the first book by this author that led me to binge 10 of her books this year, and that is I Think I Might Love You by Christina C. Jones. I didn't have any expectations going into this one, but it was absolutely amazing and funny and just the perfect rom-com I needed. So after that, I fell in love with Christina C. Jones's writing, literally binged 10 of her books this year, and I have another one loaded up on my audiobook library app right now for book number 11 because I can't get enough of her writing. And so that was surprising to me that I would fall in love with her writing after just one book, because I absolutely adored it, and can't wait to read more of her books in 2021. The next one is an unfortunate one, and that is The Roommate by Rosie Danan. I saw so many people absolutely adore this book. I love the cover, but I could not stand the main character. I thought the story was very slow. I didn't buy into the romance, and I wasn't a fan of really anything. She was pining after her crush of like 12 years, moved across the country after getting her PhD with no job, nothing lined up. She just wanted to move in with him, and then he ended up being like, hey, I'm going on the road with my band, so see you later. And she had to be with a random roommate who ends up being a porn star, and that's where like the whole book goes. But it was so disappointing. I think the main reason why I didn't like it was because of the main character, but the rest of the book was just so slow, and her choices made absolutely zero sense. So I wasn't a fan, and I gave this one 2.5 stars, really rounded it down to 2 on Goodreads, but this was surprisingly not for me. Next was A Pleasant Surprise, and that is Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. I had high hopes for this one, but I was surprised by how much I absolutely adored it because of the different storylines in here. Whatever the hero's name was, there was so much complexity to his character with his dyslexia, and I was not expecting that. And I'm actually getting my master's in literacy, which is all about teaching people how to read, and I felt so emotionally connected with him when he was talking about how his parents were teachers and didn't understand why he couldn't read, and were getting angry with him and frustrated with him and not helping him, and that made me so angry. But it just pulled at my heartstrings of how much he went through just to be able to read, and now he writes fan fiction so well, and he has all these different things he knows how to do in order to read better and in order to be able to process things. And so he does a lot of text to speech, he does a lot of listening to audiobooks, and I loved exploring someone who had a rough childhood with literacy, who now is such a successful writer, a successful actor, and even things that he had to experience, like in an interview, they're like, read this section out loud to us, and it's like, you don't understand how that puts someone on the spot because you don't know their journey with literacy. And so he really butchered it, and people made fun of him, and it made me so angry because I work with struggling readers every day, and I just loved the complexity behind his character and how that was involved in here. And then we had a plus size heroine, and it was just a great time with the romance and the development of their relationship, and I just love this book so much, and I was surprised of how much I loved in here. And the last one I have is 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake by Sarah McLean. This was surprising because I had no idea what this book was about or that Sarah McLean had even written it. It was our Ravished by Romance pick a couple months ago, and Lacey was like, hey, why don't we read this by Sarah McLean, because I wanted to read a historical, and I was like, yeah, sure. I've like never heard of that before. I absolutely loved it. It's one of my new favorite historical romances of all time. I didn't even know it was Sarah McLean's first book. It was a little on the longer side, but she had made a list of things she wanted to do because she was tired of being this spinster who had to follow society's rules, because she's like, I'm not gonna get married anyway, so why not just live it up? And so she ends up trying to gamble and drink and shoot a gun and do all these fun things that women normally can't do during this time period, and then this rake ends up helping her and running into her at different times, like when she goes to a bar to try to drink, he's there, and when she goes to fence, he's there, and it's just a lot of fun. I absolutely loved it. Could not recommend this book enough. Book 2 wasn't as great, but I'm excited for book 3, and it was a pleasant surprise reading this one as well. And that is my list of my most surprising reads of 2020. Let me know down below if any of these are ones that you've read or were surprised by, or if you had any other surprising reads of 2020. I'd love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.